Greetings, Benjamin J. from Ben's Trains with another in the series. Well, a cold and snowy day here today. In fact, we are snowed in. The streets and the driveway are solid ice. So not going anywhere today, so it makes a great day to work in the train room. So working on this old pre-war motor, as you see, spoked wheels, and actually in fairly decent condition. The problem with this one was it would run about a foot and then it would lock up solid. So been putting off working on it. Anyway, good day for it. So pulled the wheels off. I had to replace the intermediate gear. Remember, this motor is 80, 85 years old, something like that. Pre-war. The contactor was so worn, as you can see. There were actually grooves cut in the contactor itself. So I filled those with solder, which will last for years. Anyway, I pulled the wheels off, replaced the intermediate gear. The problem was this gear was damaged. When this intermediate gear begins to wear, it starts tearing up the gearing on these wheels. And this thing would run a foot and then it would jam up because it would actually jump a tooth and jam the motor. You'd break it loose, it would run great for about a foot or so, and then it would do it again. So the only way to get this repaired was to replace that wheel. Unfortunately, I do not have a spoked geared wheel. So I've replaced it with a Baldwin driver for now. When I get a spoked wheel, I will very likely pull this back off and put a spoked wheel on it. But it got it up and running. There's a lot of wear on this motor. Like I said, this is 80, 85 years old, so it was literally just worn out. So I replaced the intermediate gear with a modern plastic gear from Grossman's. And I had to replace that front wheel. Anyway, it's up and running and actually runs quite well, as you see. So what I'm going to do, for now anyway, is put this in a shell. This is that old Canadian Pacific that was covered with rust, and I stripped it in vinegar, if you remember right. Anyway, so it gives me a good place just to park this motor for now. So let's assemble this and see how it will run. Now, this is far from perfect. It is just basically junk, or was basically junk. It wouldn't run more than a foot or so. And like I said, it would just lock up absolutely solid. So, been putting off doing anything with it. This seemed like the perfect day. We are not going anywhere today, that's for sure. So I'll get this mounted in here, and we'll put this on the rail and see how it runs. Now, these rear wheel bearings are really, really sloppy. I don't know if you can see this or not. Let's see if I can get a shot of this. You see that? A pronounced wobble in the wheel bearings. The wheel bearings are shot, but these are pre-war, so you have to replace them with pre-war bearings. Pre-war and post-war are different sizes, but you can see how much slop there is in that axle, and that's because the bearings are simply just worn out. Anyway, let me pull the camera off the tripod, and we'll put this on a consist and run it around and see how it actually runs. So this is that set that showed up yesterday. It's got the tilt couplers on it. Anyway, it's already on the outside rail, so I figured I would just do a quick video and get this up and running. So without further ado, let's see how this goes. So a Marx pre-war motor, resurrected from the dead, had to replace the right front wheel with a Baldwin driver because I don't have any spoked wheels, and it still needs wheel bearings, but it's up and running, as you see. So for being made out of junk, this is actually running quite well. It's far from perfect, but it's a running motor. It runs forward and reverse, as you see. It actually runs quite well. So it needs wheel bearings and it needs a matching wheel. But in the meantime, this is good enough for now. like I said, far from perfect, but it's a running motor. That's why I always stress, don't overlook the junk. I don't even remember where I got this motor from, but I got it because it wouldn't run. I mean, it was virtually worn out. 80, 85 years old. The contactors themselves were worn completely through, as you see. So I've just filled the holes with epoxy, or with solder, and this should run for the rest of my life anyway. So it's far from perfect, has one mismatched wheel on it, but it does have a new intermediate gear, and it has a new front wheel. Not matching, but even so, it gave me a running motor. So when I get another junker in that is beyond help, I'll strip it and then use the wheel bearings and possibly change the contactor. But these are going to run the rest of my life with no problem now. So anyway, just a quick video on a old junk motor that is up and running, as you see. And actually running quite well. I mean, considering. It was worth the time it took to fix it, and it gave me something to do. Far from perfect, but a running locomotive made entirely from junk parts. And this motor was trashed. But it still needs those wheel bearings. That's the first thing that it really needs. And of course, it's got a mismatched wheel. But it's up and running. Like I said, I filled in the contactor with solder and brought it back to life. Replaced that front wheel, and I replaced the intermediate gear. But you can see on the armature gear itself is really badly worn from that intermediate gear going out. See how sharp and spiky that looks? You can see how poorly it's actually fitting that gear now. If I can get this to focus, there we go. As you can see, the armature actually needs to be replaced. But for now, it's good enough. It has a intermediate gear that works, a mismatched front wheel, but it's up and running. Repaired the contactors, so it's far from perfect, but it's running. That's the neat thing about it. So it's gone from an artifact to actually being a running motor. And in this case, drop it into this old shell, and you have a running locomotive. So far from perfect, but it's a really simple, expedient way to get these things running, is simply using mismatched wheels. If I had to wait for a wheel, this thing would be sitting for weeks, months perhaps. Anyway, it was just a simple expedient that worked. It looks all right. It runs well, good enough for now. Drop it into a shell, and you have a running locomotive. So I just wanted to do a quick video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.